Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite three geniuses discussing our not-so-genius takes on all things TCU football and other interesting things about the country. I can say without a doubt, this podcast is the most exciting thing about TCU football this weekend. So, with that, I want to talk about what went wrong this weekend. The obvious answer is the 4 non-offensive touchdowns we gave up. But if you take away those 4 non-offensive touchdowns, we still gave up almost 40 points. So, Barrett, tell us what on earth went wrong to lead to us giving up a bajillion points and 4 non-offensive touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off with the defense, and then we can kind of bounce over to the offense, because I think the defensive side of the football was really where we have had the biggest issues. This game, Travis Broughton, who is a cornerback, led the team in tackles, and
including punching someone in the face.
Yeah, and I think he probably also leads the team in flags thrown, honestly, for the season, but that's another story. Anytime you have a cornerback who is leading your team in tackles, that probably means 2 things. One, your front 7 is not getting to the football whenever a running back is running down the middle, and your safeties and your corners have to make a play to recover, which happened a lot. And or that corner is getting burned in man-to-man coverage consistently, and he's making the tackle right at the catch, which also happened a lot. So I think overall bad day for our defense. I think Jamel Johnson has honestly been the one bright spot on this defense. He's played really well this entire season and got a lot of tackles. But realistically, I think the biggest issue for the Horned Frogs is strength and conditioning. And you look at kind of the year-long stats for our defense and for our offensive line, honestly. And total defense, we are ranked 125th in total points per game, 78th in yards per game, 122nd in points per play. The big one to me is third down conversion. We're 123rd. And we're basically in the hundreds for every single rushing defense stat. Passing defense doesn't look too bad, but that's also because all of these teams have been running the ball down our throats because they can. Another piece of this, also in the hundreds of every single turnover stat. So we're not forcing turnovers. We're not stopping the run game. And at the end of the day, what that turns into is at the end of a game, because teams have been running the ball down our throats, our D-line is tired because we don't have the depth because Dom Williams left. And consequently, they're gashing us the rest of the game for the latter half. And this defense can't seem to find a way to stop it.
Yeah, our defense is terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other way to put that. I think we were all hoping we would be better with the change in defensive coordinator, but it doesn't seem like the defense coordinator is the problem, other than the fact that we know everybody's running on us. It's no secret. And constantly there are 4 to 6 players in the box. We're not going to stop anybody with 4 to 6 players in the box. Like, we're running 3 down linemen and 2 linebackers most of the time. That you're not going to stop anybody running the ball doing that unless you get really lucky. And this game, I think, was the most unlucky I've seen TCU in any game. That being said, I think it would have been an incredibly different game had the refs decided not to take the first drive into their own hands and hand the ball back to SMU when their quarterback clearly fumbled the ball. And the best part about that play is that the CW announcers, who know absolutely nothing, even said, man, that was a quick whistle. You think he called that whistle because he's a quarterback? Like, his forward progress wasn't really stopped there. He kind of got loose from the tackle once the ball came out and went back to the ball. So I think it would have been a different game had that been called. It kind of reminded me of the 2015 Super Bowl with the Panthers and the Broncos, where there was one play where if it had gone differently, I think it would have been a different game.
And it certainly would have been a different game because one, we score that drive otherwise, but on top of it, the entire first 17 points were handed to SMU. But more than that, if you take out the non-offensive touchdowns, we win the game. We barely win, and we shouldn't have been a barely win, and you can't take out those points. I mean, those are things that matter. But if we do, we win the game. We did put up 40 points, and I called before it because you were exactly right. We were the unluckiest we could have been. I said on this podcast last week that SMU is going to come out sprinting, and it's going to be a tale of two halves. We, for all intents and purposes, got it together, but then we gave up because what were we supposed to do? I remember looking at my fiance throughout the game and I was like, I don't even know what to be mad at because everything that could go wrong is going wrong. Like they get a kickoff return. They get two kickoff returns. One just got called. He accidentally stepped out of bounds. We didn't stop that for anything. They get two defensive touchdowns. And on top of all of this, on our kickoff return that we got and there wasn't a holding on, it gets called a holding. Sonny Dykes says, hey, I don't know. I don't think that was holding. So they, for his egregious claim that they were wrong, given an unsportsmanlike. And he says, hey, that's a little uncool that you gave me an unsportsmanlike. So they kick him out of the game. Like, every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong. So I was watching with my fiance, who, as I've mentioned on this show, is a Georgia fan. And she said, dear Lord, they never would have kicked Kirby Smart out for that. Like, it was because you talked about the refs taking the first drive into their own hands. But they took like 3 or 4 drives into their own hands. It was unbelievable to watch. Honestly, I don't know if I have a point there. I'm just angry.
This is why we have you around, Connor.
Thank you.
Just to get angry at refs.
I'm here for my not-so-genius opinions.
I honestly think there were really two things to me that made our run defense and just our defense as a whole so horrendously bad. It's strength and conditioning. Like I said, we did not get a push the entire game. We had 1 tackle for loss in the entire game. It was on a trick play where Osafo Mensah or whatever caught a guy going on a reverse. And that was our 1 tackle for loss. It wasn't because he got a push and got penetration. The other piece of this is we did a absolutely horrendous job of just doing the little things. We were wildly undisciplined, had a lot of flags. And that's another thing for the entire season. We're like 100th something or other in total penalties per game. But had a lot of flags, didn't set the edge at all the entire game. And that's why Brashad Smith bounced it outside every single time and took off for 20, 30 yards per carry. And just as a whole, guys weren't in the right spots. It was as if the defense just didn't do their homework and weren't doing their jobs that they were set for, to where nobody knows what's going on.
I don't think the guys on our team, with the exception of a few shining moments in this time period, have done their job since the Michigan game when Coach gave that big speech about doing your job. Since that moment, we've stopped doing our job in every game. And you mentioned the strength and conditioning problem. I think Jacob mentioned it in our text thread last night as well. It shows because we have no strength on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
I feel more confident on 3rd and 12 than I do on 3rd and my cat's paw. Like we have no strength whatsoever. I mean, like we may as well have me run the ball because we cannot push through those other guys. It looks like I'm running the ball. It looks like a guy as strong as me, and Cam Cook is way stronger than I am. But we have no strength up there, and he can't push through.
And one of the things to that point, right, is I'm an Arkansas fan. I've watched Kendall Briles be at Arkansas and at TCU. And whenever he was at Arkansas, the Hogs were one of the top 10 rushing offenses in the country. So I know he can scheme up a run game.
As much as I want to blame Kendall Briles, and trust me, if anyone gives me a reason to, I agree. It's his fault. But the truth of the matter is you can't blame him for this. There's no strength on the what's he supposed to do?
Yeah. No, our O-line's not getting pushed. The D-line's not getting pushed. We were averaging 2.7 rush yards per game for the entire season.
And
that
you know
is
what
horrendous.
I said it already that in the game I was watching, and I said, what are we supposed to do? I said to my fiance during the second half, I looked at her and I said, you know what? I think they should just start hitting everyone. Like, we're losing this game. They've ejected our coach. So I think you should just start punching people until the police remove you. Because quite frankly, that's all we could do at that point. That was all we had left in the box. But the reason for it was we couldn't press on any level because our guys didn't have that strength and conditioning. When everything is falling apart, it's because there's no strength and conditioning. When it's not an isolated flaw and just everyone looks weak, it's because everyone is weak.
Not to mention that, yes, we've been weak, and that's been terrible and awful to watch. But Kaz has a master's degree from Mizzou in counseling psychology with an emphasis in health promotion and sports psychology. Like, yeah, we're weak physically. This team is also extremely weak mentally. And I think you can see that with all of the defensive penalties and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that we've been getting.
Well,
it's hard to watch.
I think the first time you saw that was last year during the K-State game when you could visibly see the guys give up. And one of the K-State players even said, like, it feels good to watch the other team break. And that's what mentally they gave up. And today we hoped to see, yesterday, we hoped to see after Sonny got out, the guys get pissed and really go out there. And they did for exactly one drive. And then everyone except for Jack Bash gave up. They kept playing to the extent that we're just here so we don't get fired.
Yeah, and I think to flip over to the offensive side of the football, right? This game, it's so hard to judge a quarterback when you have zero rushing offense to be able to run any play action whatsoever. That being said, like, Hoover had almost 400 yards again. He looked off this game. He just wasn't hitting the throws he normally does, and the guy's normally wildly accurate. As everyone who watches this podcast knows, I'm a big Josh Hoover fan. He did not look very good yesterday. Obviously had 4 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 2 picks. The first pick, you just shouldn't throw that football. And the second one just kind of sailed on him a little bit. I'm not too worried about that second one. But that first pick is really the first throw where I've seen him just make a poor decision the entire season. And I think one positive we can get, if anything, out of this SMU game is Jack Besh is fantastic, confirmed. And also Eric McAllister coming and being healthy, that this TCU receiving core might be one of the deepest receiving cores in the country. And I somewhat understand us wanting to pass the ball all the time, but we have to find some level of balance in order to really maximize that potential.
We haven't done this in a while, but it's very clear from this SMU game that the golden player was Jack Bash. The
Franken Sensational
was McAllister. And the need more out of was literally every person with a pulse in all of TCU. Like, we need more out of everybody across the board. We didn't even have that. We normally sell out. We normally do to SMU what Texas does to us, and their stadium looks purple, and we didn't even do that. Like, even our fans kind of gave up this game. There was nobody there on any level across the board. And you know what else? The other thing, is a week ago, I took a pulse check on this. Oh, hold on. But I will say, before I say something negative, you just said that was the positive we can take away. There's one more positive. And is that with all the just atrocious football we had to watch this weekend, the good news that we know is that it doesn't hurt us on a publicity level because no one else saw it because it was on the CW. But I don't remember my negative. Keep going. I'm sure I was grumpy about something.
No, I think that is an important thing to touch on. Oh, go ahead. I see you.
I remember my negative is that a week ago I took a pulse check and I said, how are we still feeling? We all said still feeling good. Today, I don't think there's a team left on our schedule that can't beat us. Yeah. I think we can beat all of them, but I don't think there's a single one that can't beat us. Now, what were you saying, Barrett?
No, I agree with that. I think that basically every game from here on out is a coin toss of which TC you're going to get which other team you're going to get.
I disagree with that. And that I'm not confident that we can beat all of these teams anymore. I think we'll beat Utah because that just happens.
Well, honestly, we'll do to Utah what we used to do to Texas and what we used to do to Utah is, although when we used to do it to Utah, we were good. But what we used to do to Texas, where we'll be an atrocious team that brings our entire A game for that game that we shouldn't win, and we'll win that and make them look foolish. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I don't know. I was feeling good about Kansas a week ago because they've fallen apart. And now my question is, which one of us fell apart more?
Listen, I also don't think SMU is all that bad.
No.
Like, you watched BYU this past weekend. BYU is a good team.
There is something to be said that the reason we think SMU sucks is that they lost to a team that turns out not to suck as much as we thought. But I also don't think SMU's all that good. I don't think SMU's good enough to score 66 points on an even average team.
And I will say one other thing to keep in mind here is that this is an SMU offensive line in particular that this entire season leading up to this game has had a lot of questions thrown their way of if they were actually an okay offensive line. And they absolutely manhandled our D-line yesterday. It was not close.
What D-line?
Exactly. The three people that we rotate in for D-line.
Those three guys that, like I said earlier, showed up so they wouldn't get fired.
My question is who the heck was calling plays against Stanford? Because we rushed the passer against Stanford. We had like 10 tackles for loss and 4 sacks against Stanford. Stanford beat Syracuse yesterday. Stanford is undefeated in their ACC tenure. Who was calling plays there, and why aren't they calling plays anymore?
And here's the other thing. Stanford, I don't think will remain undefeated in their ACC tenure, but also we didn't even look like we were trying to do those things. Like, it's not like we were getting stopped from doing those things. We weren't attempting those things.
Yeah.
Just a tough look for TCU all around.
I get that SMU has a mobile quarterback. I get it. But at some point, you have to give up and trust your DBs. Like, yeah, they might get pass interference thrown every play, but that's 15 yards, not 40. Like, you rush the passer, you might cause a fumble, and I think that was like our first takeaway of the year or something like that.
Yes.
Like, oh man, it's just been tough to watch. And yeah, we don't have Dom. That sucks. But we knew we didn't have Dom for the past 5 months. It's not new information. Well, the coach's job is to scheme away from that.
I was saying that to someone this morning that I was like, a lot of the things that went wrong weren't like shocks. That's awesome. Thank you. But they weren't like things we shouldn't have been expecting. It was just like, did no one think to address this glaring weakness? Like in 15 different places?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sick of talking about this god-awful weekend. Do you guys want to move on to the Kansas game?
Listen, I'm not sure there's much we can move on to.
It's just planning for another awful weekend instead of talking about a past awful weekend.
Honestly.
Hey, but the good thing about planning for this awful weekend is the fact that Kansas has not looked good by
Kansas
any
is not
means.
good. The other thing I'll say, and this sounds silly, but I did hear it from Jeremy Clark, which makes it sound serious. I was listening to the broadcast at the beginning of the year, and he was saying, we play really bad in Lawrence. We just do, for who knows why. He said he was happy we're playing in the Arrowhead because it'll be somewhere other than Lawrence. And I think there is a point to that. Like, Kansas doesn't look good, and we are at least playing in what's pretending to be a neutral site.
Now,
Kansas is favored.
Yeah.
They should be.
The thing that I will say is that this Kansas team is another team where it looks like on paper their offense is built to tear our defense apart. They are a run-first offense. They have a great running back. They have a mobile quarterback.
Well, and so far we are 0 in everything against run-first offense with a mobile quarterback.
Yep. So something has to change for our defensive scheme for this game, because whatever Andy Avalos is doing right now is not working, specifically against the run game. And this is a team that will 100% abuse that if they can.
Yeah.
This is a spoiled thing to say on my part, and I sound like a Texas fan, but I honestly am standing by this. If another run-first team runs all over us, I say fire Andy Avalos. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to say on the the Long Island doesn't count, fourth game of the season. But if all it takes to beat the team is that the other team decides to run the ball, like if that's the blueprint, like it's not even something fancy. It's just, hey, run the ball and then TCU loses. Then, quite frankly, no, goodbye. That's not good enough. Now, on the flip side, if Andy Avalos shows growth and we make any effort to stop the run in a way that we haven't, fine. He can stay a whole other year. He's good to go. But like, if we do nothing, like it has been, like Jacob said, even the CW guys can figure out our problems with the run. If we do nothing to address this obviously glaring issue, then I'm under the impression no one wants to win. No one even cares. And if that's what's happening, then we need to get something together.
If that's what's happening, it's not a defensive coordinator problem. That would go all the way to the top.
To be fair, that's true. Although, you know what? I said it last year. At the end of the show, I said Sonny took us to the national championship. Absolutely, one losing season is not something to fire him over. But if we have back-to-back losing seasons, I'd like to look at all the way at the top. I'm not saying fire the guy. I'm saying have a very serious conversation. I'm saying at least consider it. Because if we go back-to-back losing seasons, I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's not like the recruiting is any different than it was under Gary Patterson.
Yeah.
And we brought him in as a quarterback guru, a recruiting guru, and an offensive coach. And granted, our offenses have been good.
Yes.
Scoring however many points, 42
points.
42. Is enough to win a game. It is. It's enough to win a game. But come on now, like it's not your job isn't if you just want to coach the offense, be an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
If you want to coach a team, you got to worry about the defense too. And that's our problem.
Yeah. Enough said.
Like, and Kansas, going on to Kansas, their leading running back has twice the yards that Cook has.
He has 2 yards?
No, he has 450 yards.
I know. I'm being
on 12 more carries.
That's ridiculous.
That's terrible. Granted, Jaden Daniels sucks. He's not a good quarterback. But I bet he throws the ball 15 times. I mean, that's the blueprint, right? That's what UCF did. That's what SMU did. SMU's quarterback was 9 for 10 in the first half last night.
And by the way, the first half is when they won. The game was over by the first half, as much as I tried to believe otherwise.
And I do think that, like, going back to the level of discipline that's required on defense, right? UCF abused it, lack of discipline. They ran read option the entire game. SMU abused it. They ran basically read option more or less the entire game. If I see another team with a mobile quarterback like Jalen Daniels and a good running back abuse our defense with read option because our guys do not understand their jobs and cannot set an edge, I will lose my freaking mind.
Yeah.
I will say, I'm interested. I'm less interested because SMU plays Florida State, who could just lose to any team in the country if they wanted. But I am interested in how this next week goes. Although, to be fair, we beat Cal by 5 points.
Oh, wait, Florida State beat Cal? Dang it. I was just about to ask what happened in that game.
Yeah, 14-9, a true beauty of a game.
A mid-off, if you will.
Oh, those poor Cal fans. Cal fans on Twitter are incredible. They like leaned into the whole being woke thing, and it's phenomenal to see. Like, props to them. They were fantastic this week.
Unfortunately, not enough to get those 5 extra points against the worst Florida State team there's ever been. When Florida State was an all-woman school without a football team, they had a better football team than they do today. So that puts a huge asterisk on what I'm about to say about SMU because their next opponent is Florida State. But I am curious to watch the SMU-Florida State game this next weekend. And when we get to picks, I'm picking SMU over Florida State because Florida State just sucks. But it'll be interesting because part of me does wonder, under Gary Patterson, TCU had the best record against Texas of just about anybody. But TCU had the absolute and overwhelmingly losing record in games 1 week from the Texas game. Like, if that was one team, we were dominated by that team. And I'm curious to see if SMU pulled out all the stops against us. They had their absolute best showing they're going to have because we are their Texas. I'm curious to see. I expect them to beat Florida State, but I'm curious to see. You can't expect them to put up 66 points again because that was 4 offensive touchdowns. But do they put up anywhere close to 38 points? Perhaps because Florida State sucks balls. But I'm intrigued to see them next week.
Yeah. Maybe we win against Kansas. Maybe we don't. At this point, I'm just kind of along for the ride. Listen, I'm a Panthers fan. And I've kind of become used to my teams losing by a lot every single week.
Well,
and once you stop caring, they lose. The season becomes much more fun.
Here's the problem is I don't have the power to get to that. I just suffer week in and week out. And I will say I sat through our 2013 season, which was 4-8. So in our since then, we still haven't gone that low. And I'm very worried we're on a trajectory to put me through that again. But I've been through a lot of 5-7s where I didn't stop caring that we were losing. It stopped hurting as much, but it never stopped hurting.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything to say about this Kansas game beyond that, or do we want to get to picks? This can be a shorter episode since it's truly just a depressing week.
No, I think Josh Hoover bounces back in this game.
For what it's worth, I feel I am our optimist. I'm going to pick TCU when we get there, and I won't apologize for that. Josh Hoover bounces back. Andy Avalos proves he doesn't deserve to be fired and at least tries to stop the run. I feel relatively good, but relatively good after what just happened is such a low bar.
Listen, as long as we don't have a good week at practice.
Yes, that's true. I want to have the world's worst week in practice we've ever had.
Yep.
Well, I'll give us our standings update. I am currently in the lead at 19 points. Barrett is at second place at 18, and Jacob is in third with 17. This is still absolutely anybody's game because we are all neck and neck of each other. No one is pulling away in any direction. This comes with an enormous caveat. The mystery game did not occur this week because my students who were assigned to pick a mystery game picked 0 games. I asked for any football game, and they came up with nothing. So their assignment tomorrow is to come up with 2 games, and our old picks will apply to the first game they come up with. And our new picks we get this week will come up with the next one, which means there will be 2 mystery games this weekend. And if they're not, I'm going to be furious with my middle schoolers. But with that being said, there wasn't the normal opportunity to jump ahead. There will be twice the opportunity to jump ahead this week. But with that, game 1, TCU at Kansas, Roll Toad. Like I just said, I'm picking them for this. I will never pick against my Frogs. We're winning every game for the remainder of the season, no matter how much we suck balls. Jacob, who's winning? TCU at Kansas.
I'm going to go with Kansas. Just to try for the reverse jinx.
Barrett?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is, again, another team that's built to beat this defense. And until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume that Andy Avalos is guilty and TCU loses this game.
Here's the thing. It is innocent until proven guilty, and Andy Avalos has proven guilty. Like, it's already occurred. Now he has to win the appeal because he lost across the board already.
Yeah.
With the exception of the first half of the UCF game. That's Stanford I felt good about, but even that we gave up a lot of points. Whatever. Moving on. Louisville at Notre Dame. Jacob.
I'm going to go with the Cardinals here. I'm not confident that Notre Dame can throw the ball. So I'm going to go with Louisville, who they're good this year. They are. But I know that they can create the explosive plays. And so I'll trust – I'm going to trust the explosive plays against a running team.
Fair. Barrett.
Connor, you already know the answer to this one. It's Louisville, 100%.
All right. J.R.R. Tolkien once said that Catholics view history as a long defeat. I recently wrote a paper that God gave gave Catholics Notre Dame to help us understand that long defeat. However, Tolkien also said that in this long defeat, we will witness occasional glimpses of victory. And this will be one of them. Notre Dame, here we go. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Jacob.
I'm going to take Kansas State. Both of these teams lost really embarrassingly this week. I think Kansas State lost at least. It seemed like they lost based on their fans on Twitter. And I know Oklahoma State lost because Connor said that Cam Rising is out, so I should put money on Oklahoma State. And that did not pan out well for me. So,
okay, to all of our credit, Utah put up 22 points, which is fine, but that is not Cam Rising. Although, you know what? It is Cam Rising numbers. Cam Rising is not as good as we think he is.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas State and their female quarterback.
Ferris.
It's the second straight week Oklahoma State loses to a girl.
I'm going to ride with Jacob on this one. I think Kansas State is this smash mouth football team. Not to say that Oklahoma State isn't, but I think Kansas State's just going to run right over Oklahoma State.
Did the Panthers just score a third touchdown? Jacob looks excited.
They did not, but it was a good play.
Okay,
we got first
down. But I think Kansas State's defense is way better than Oklahoma State's defense is, and I think that's the difference here.
I'm picking Kansas State on the sole grounds that they're the home team, and I've never in my life been able to predict an Oklahoma State game, so I'm going with the home team. I'd also like Jacob pointed out that we need to look at TCU games the way a Panthers fan looks at their games. And that moment really was it. We need to celebrate a relatively good play the same way we would a touchdown. All right. There it is.
Sports
Please.
ball.
Oh, no, Adam Thielen, be
No,
alive.
it's not. It is.
Please be alive.
All right. What I can only assume will be College Game Day this week. If it's Jacob, is it?
Adam Thielen might have died, but it was a touchdown.
That's a price I'm willing to pay.
Andy Dalton now has over 200 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in the first half. The Panthers have scored 3 times, matching their season total.
I am
And
going to
scored
go
more
get
points.
my dog because the Red Rocket is back, baby.
He is back. And Adam Thielen is dead.
All right. What will presumably, I'd like to address that the best part of this episode has been us discussing the Panthers. And to our credit, we say we discuss other interesting things. It's always been part of our tagline. All right.
We have 20 points in a game.
What I will only assume will be this week's College Game Day, if it's not announced already, Georgia at Bama. Jacob.
Interesting. This is a coin toss, in my opinion. I am going to pick Georgia.
Barrett.
Yeah, I agree with Jacob that this is a coin toss, but I think it's only a coin toss because they're playing at Bama. I think Georgia's actually the better team. I'm going to side with Georgia in this one.
All right. A year ago to the day, maybe not calendar-wise, but one day after the SMU game last year, I was kicked in the balls for picking against Georgia. That same person is in the room with me today. The game is at Bama. Bama has a lot to prove. I want to have children. Georgia is winning this game. Illinois at Penn State, Jacob.
Illinois has been surprising this year. They had a good win against Nebraska, who has now failed to beat a ranked team for 3,000 days. Yeah, I'm going to go with Illinois because I don't like Penn State. They're boring. They're like that team that always wins but never beats good teams.
Well, and it's not even ever worth watching. Like, even when they beat boring teams or bad teams, it's just boring.
Yeah.
I think that Happy Valley is a little too difficult to play in for Illinois to come out with a win in this game. So I'm going to side with some of my work colleagues, and I'll pick Penn State, even though I agree with Jacob. I don't think Penn State is nearly as good as they are always hyped up to be.
So I have been under the impression that Penn State's been really bad this year because I was going to pick against them. And I just went to look at them, and they beat West Virginia by 20-plus points. They had a nail-biter against Bowling Green, which is where I got the impression they're very bad, I think. And they kicked the teeth in of Kent State, but duh. But I think the reason that I think they're really bad is exactly what Jacob said. I think they're just boring, and as a result, I feel that they're bad at football. But the vibes feel like a good enough reason. I'm going with Illinois getting the upset over Penn State in Happy Valley. Also, my cousin just got engaged. Woo!
Woo! Roll Toad.
Arizona at Utah.
Arizona.
Maddie.
Can I just vote for Cam Rising getting hurt again?
Yes, you can. Would you like to vote for how that impacts the game in some way?
I think Arizona comes out on top in this one.
All right. I vote Arizona as well because Cam Rising is going to be hurt. Oregon at UCLA, Jacob.
Oregon, big time.
Barrett.
Oregon's going to win this one. They've got a lot of speed on that team.
I have to say, this week is so much more boring than last week. We're all picking the same teams for all of these games. And to be fair, that's because I think there's a clearer choice in a lot of these games.
Yeah, I picked Penn State.
What'd you say?
I picked Penn State.
You picked Penn State. I picked TCU, and those are the only two moments anyone's ever differed. Florida State at SMU. Yeah, but they played a sucky team yesterday. Sorry, my dad's chirping in the background.
I'm going to pick SMU.
Barrett?
I'm riding with the cinnamon rolls.
The criminal cinnamon rolls.
If I am going with my brain, Florida State could lose to my middle school lacrosse team I coached last year. And not only is that middle school and a different sport, but I am a very bad coach.
Who doesn't know lacrosse?
Who did not play lacrosse and does not know how to play lacrosse.
Hey, but you won a game.
Oh, I won a game, and I believe that the team of fifth graders I played against was a better team than Florida State, and I think I could lead my team to victory over Florida State. However, I did say that I think SMU will be to us what we were to Texas and will disappoint in the following week. I think SMU can win this game. I think they are more talented than Florida State, but I'm riding with my boys. Which I will remind you, that chant, according to the men and women in the state of Florida, is less racist than Florida's Gator Bait chant. Worth remembering because they're the racists. Washington State at Boise. Jacob.
Washington State. Let's go Washington State.
Good for you. Barrett.
Boise State's got a fantastic running back, Nashon Jeanty. I think he's been hurt most of the season, though. I think maybe he'll play this game. So I'm just going to ride with the cool blue field.
I pick Boise almost every time they come up because I really, really do like Boise. Like, I like the blue field. I hated the team when we used to have to play them, but now that we don't have to play them, I like them. They've upset a lot of people over the years, but they haven't upset people in a long time. And I feel conflicted in this one because as much as I like Boise, now that Washington State has not single-handedly, Washington State and Oregon State have, as a team, revived the Pac-12, I'd like to pick Washington State. So with it being a coin flip, I'm going at home, Boise. Last but not least, we have our mystery. I picked Team 1 because my random number generator went with Team 1. Jacob, who are you going with?
Team 1.
Team 2. We'll keep riding with Team 2.
All right, and it's worth remembering last week, I had Team 1 and you both had Team 2. Those will hopefully be two separate games, although I don't hate the idea that we have one game be both. And Jacob just suffers from picking against himself. But those will be two different games. We'll have twice as much opportunity to run away. And with it, that's all our picks for the week. Y'all have anything else?
No, the Panthers might be winning by 14 when they go into halftime. They haven't gone into halftime yet. It's been 2 minutes for the past 15 minutes.
To really summarize how awful the state of affairs are, Panthers fans are happier than we are.
Listen, we might win a game.
We might not.
Go
Stanford might be our only one.
He missed it.
Touchdown Panthers.
He missed it. No, he just missed the field goal.
Okay.
We're winning by 14 whole points. That's pretty bad. That's a lot of points.
All right. Y'all want to wrap it up?
Scored 14 points this season.
Roll Toad, Connor.
Prior to Andy Dalton. The biggest Horned Frog victory is the Panthers scoring 14 points.
Andy Dalton's resurgence.
I'm drinking red wine for the Red Rocket. Have a good
Love
one,
it.
boys. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.
Roll Tide.
Starting to sizzle in Vegas. Panthers up 7 on CBS.